Hi again, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed your dinner. I feel like I'm in a room with 200 of my closest friends, but if you don't know me, I'm Carly Matthews. I'm ACC's Vice President of Communications. Thank you. This is actually really surreal for me. I got involved with ACC as a rotating intern in 2018. And now, like I said, I run a department with 6 people. And doing this work has been probably the most fulfilling thing I've been able to do in my life. And tonight, I get to welcome one of our members to the stage who I met doing a radio interview in North Carolina. And part of my job that I just love the most is being able to amplify all of your voices. So I'm really excited to welcome Delaney Santre to the stage.
Hi everyone, I'm Delaney Santry and I'm the branch leader at UNC Chapel Hill and an ACC ambassador. I'm here tonight to introduce Zachary Hartman, the Chief Policy Officer at Ducks Unlimited. Mr. Hartman has served as CPO at Ducks Unlimited since 2019. In this role, he works to conserve waterfowl populations across North America. Prior to his work with Ducks Unlimited, Zach led federal and regulatory policy issues at Anheuser-Busch and worked on Capitol Hill for Senator John Boozman, during which time he crafted policy for Farm Bill proposals in 2011, 2012, and 2014. Please join me in welcoming Zach to the stage.
How's it going, Team ACC? All right. It's such a pleasure to be here with you guys tonight. My relationship with ACC really goes back to its founding when I partnered with ACC, and as a partner when I was working at Anheuser-Busch companies, I was just really excited about the idea of having a lot of young, enthusiastic folks who are excited about conservation, who are excited about taking care of the environment, and wanted to advocate for those issues. You have no idea the impact that you make every day on Capitol Hill when you go into those offices. Is the slide presentation? There we go. All right. I thought I was going to have to freelance it. The clicker worked during the drive. Oh, I'm pushing the wrong button. Who are we? There we go. Sorry, that was a rough start. Who are we? Who is Ducks Unlimited? Raise your hand if you're a conservationist. All right. Raise your hand if you are a duck hunter. All right. Raise your hand if you're a member of Ducks Unlimited. All right. Hopefully after this presentation, you're all going to want to join Ducks Unlimited. Now raise your hand if you have a special connection to the outdoors. That's who we are at Ducks Unlimited. Everybody that works there has a special connection to the outdoors. Mine began with my father, who is a fishing guide and a high school teacher from Sarasota, Florida. And every weekend we would fish the waters of Sarasota Bay. And it was there that I learned the responsibility that I had to taking care of the environment. This was a resource that was there for us to enjoy, but it wouldn't be there if we didn't enjoy it. And yes, those fantastic mustaches are hereditary. Who else? So what about Ducks Unlimited? What else about Ducks Unlimited? Ducks Unlimited began in 1937 in the middle of the Dust Bowl. It was founded by duck hunters who were concerned that the drought was resulting in declining duck populations. And if you are a duck hunter, you care about duck populations because the best kind of duck is the one that flies into your blind when you're hunting. But without sustainable duck populations, we knew that there would be no future of waterfowling in the waterfowling traditions that Americans enjoy. And look how far we've come. This project right here is Big Grass Marsh Duck Factory. This is the first ever Ducks Unlimited project that began in 1939 in Manitoba, Canada. Canada and the northern United States, North Dakota, eastern Montana, western Minnesota, Iowa, is the prairie pothole region of the United States. These little bitty potholes that were carved out by the glaciers are the duck factory. They are where more than 70% of all the ducks in North America are born before they grow up and migrate south. So we went from the duck factory to Connecticut. This is a Ducks Unlimited project in Connecticut where they're installing a water control feature for wetlands. Because what Ducks Unlimited is at its heart is the world leader in wetlands conservation. And what do we all get as a result from what these duck hunters have done? We not only get fantastic wildlife habitat that contributes to biodiversity and hopefully one day will fill the skies with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever, but we also get all the other things that you all enjoy every day, whether you love to hunt ducks or whether you love ducks or not. You get biodiversity. 70% of all wildlife rely on 70% of all threatened and endangered species rely on a wetland at some point in their life cycle. We also get coastal resiliency. We get protection from storms. We get flood attenuation. Wetlands hold back water on the landscape and prevent flooding. We get water quality. Wetlands are nature's kidneys. They filter water as it goes down into the water table. And what else do we get? We get groundwater recharge. So when you want to talk about climate resiliency, there's really no better return on investment than a wetland. Now, what is this connection between hunting and conservation? Well, it all starts right here. This is my family. This is the first full family duck hunt that we ever went on. But it begins with that passion that duck hunters bring to conservation every day. They're so connected to this resource. I think that when people think of hunters, they might oftentimes be misunderstood, but if you want to harvest an animal, you have to know more about that animal than just about anybody else. You got to know where it sleeps. You got to know where it eats. You got to know what kind of food it likes to eat. You got to know its behavior, its migratory patterns. But hunters also are one of the #1 funders of conservation in America, thanks to the North American model of conservation. And without money, conservation just becomes conversation. So these are a few examples of the ways in which hunters contribute to conservation every day. There's a federal duck stamp up there. If you want to harvest waterfowl in the United States, you have to have a federal duck stamp. There's state duck stamps. Every state, almost every state, has a duck stamp. Your fishing licenses and your hunting licenses that you buy when you go out to enjoy outdoor recreation, whether it's hunting or fishing, those also contribute to conservation. And last but certainly not least, let's not forget about the Pittman-Robertson and Dingell-Johnson taxes that are paid on firearms, ammunition, and fishing tackle. 10% of everything that you buy goes into the Pittman-Robertson Dingell-Johnson fund. That fund funds up to 80% of our state agencies for fish and wildlife that do the majority of the management of our wildlife. Hunters also are into science because we need science. Does anybody know what's happening here? Raise your hand if you know what's happening here. What's happening here? They're getting banded. That is some country boy bling that is going on that duck's foot right there. And what is that? That is a band. Scientists capture ducks, they record their gender, their size, their age, and they put a band on its foot. When that band is recovered by a hunter or anyone else, it's reported to the U.S. Geological Service and you get a certificate. And you get to see where that duck was banded, how long ago it was banded by, the biologist that banded it, and how far it's gone to where you found the band or harvested the band. It's really exciting. Hunters love this. But it's the 21st century. Raise your hand if you know what this is. Yes, telemetry data. We really nerd out over this. And that duck in the upper right-hand corner is wearing a GPS backpack that gets put on a duck, and then they can follow it around to see where it goes. We study that behavior so that we understand waterfowl habits and that we can invest in the habitat that they need. And all of that science goes in to support the North American Waterfowl Management Plan. This is the underpinning plan of a treaty between the United States, Canada, and Mexico, because there are no ducks, there are no Canadian ducks or Mexican ducks or American ducks. These ducks live and spend their whole life in North America. So we have to conserve habitat across 3 countries, across the whole entire continent, make sure that waterfowl have breeding habitat, migratory habitat, and wintering habitat all along their journey so that they can be healthy. And this is what that information looks like. You take NAWAMP, and it tells you where to do conservation. This is actually them breaking a dam at the Klamath National Wildlife Refuge. It was the first ever waterfowl protection area created on the border of California and Oregon, and it is one of the most important waterfowl production areas in the country. And when you do that conservation, this is what you get, and this is what hunters care about. The BPOP survey. Every year, scientists from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and from Canada fly around the breeding grounds in airplanes and literally count ducks. And when they count ducks, that goes into the adaptive harvest management system that says how many ducks you get to shoot during a season so that we can make sure that that's a sustainable harvest. And it also tells us how long that season's going to be. Because of the work of Ducks Unlimited and our partners in conservation, we have had what we refer to as liberal seasons. I know that's not a really great word here, but we love it in duck hunting, right? We love liberal seasons in duck hunting. That means we get 60 days and 6 bird bag limits. And as you can see here, that framework that comes out of that adaptive harvest system comes from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then the specific limits for every individual state are set by their state agencies. And what do you get from that? You get big smiles on people's faces. This is my son with one of my good friends, George Dunklin, after a duck hunt. And this is really, again, where it begins and where it ends. It starts with the passion that conservationists and waterfowlers bring to the table every single day, time in and time out. Time and time again, duck hunters, fishermen, and others step up and support legislative and regulatory increases in those license fees because they know it's going to a resource with our state partners in conservation that do the best job ever taking care of that. So how does Ducks Unlimited do what we do? We don't just take the money and do the conservation. It's much more complicated than that. It involves events. Raise your hand if you've ever been to a DU banquet. How fun was that? You had a great time. Raise your hand if you ever won a gun at a DU banquet. Yeah, making one. We need to get y'all out there. There are 5,000 events just like this that are hosted by 31,000 Ducks Unlimited volunteers across America every year that raise about $70 million in unrestricted funding for conservation. We also have cool partners. This is a concert from Riley Green. I'm not putting it up here because I want you to buy a ticket. It's sold out in like 30 minutes. But Riley Green is a big supporter of duck hunting, and he is hosting a concert for us in Little Rock, and he'll give us part of his ticket sale revenue. We also do policy. You guys are all very policy-centric. Ducks Unlimited is very policy-centric. This is a picture of all of our volunteer advocates at our fly-in from this past year. We had over 60 people come to Washington, D.C. to advocate for critical programs for conservation, like the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, or NAWCA, and things like Farm Bill conservation programs. This is a picture of our student advocates. Ducks Unlimited has a DU University Policy Advocates program. And that's what I meant earlier when I said how impactful all of you were. 2 years ago, I had a conversation with the head of our youth engagement team, and they were having a hard time getting university volunteers to stay connected to DE volunteerism when they graduated from college. I said, what if we make them policy advocates? They can take that wherever they go. And he said, let's try it out. So we got a scholarship program. We underwrote 8 students to come to Washington, D.C. for our fly-in. It was such a hit. The way the members responded to them is the same way that they respond to all of you. They're engaged. They're excited. They want to know what young people think about. So this past year, we increased it to 15 people, and we're going to have to be careful or else our DC fly-in is just going to be the university fly-in. But it's a great opportunity and a great way to engage and advocate for the Ducks. We also do science. This is a really cool program that we have called the Duck DNA Project. Raise your hand if you know what crowdsourcing is. Awesome. This is a genetic data crowdsourcing project. If you harvest a duck, you can take and you apply to be part of the Duck DNA program. You harvest the duck, you take a DNA sample, and you submit it, and we analyze that data and tell you what kind of duck it is. This duck right here is a hybrid duck. It's a half American widgeon and half mallard. The primary purpose of this project is to really study the way in which game farm mallard DNA is working its way into the wild mallard population. This is a real big issue. You might know what a game farm is. It's where they have pen-raised ducks, and you go out there and you pay money and you shoot them. It's fun, but those ducks are not native mallards, and when their DNA gets into mallard ducks, it affects their migratory patterns and all sorts of other things. It's not good for our native populations. We use partners. We can't do anything that we do without great partners like ACC and other organizations that we work with, federal agencies, state agencies for environmental quality. We do all sorts of work with all sorts of people, but I love this picture because it's from the latest big win that Chris and I worked on together at the MABA reception in Washington, D.C., and of course, I'm on the end because Chris said, stay on the end in case we need to cut you out of the picture. And we can all see where Chris is standing. But this is a fantastic group of really amazing leaders. These are some of the most powerful people in conservation in Washington, D.C. right here. Myself excluded, of course. But this is a major accomplishment. Thank you. Yeah, let's give it up for everybody that's working hard in D.C., even me. And we do conservation. We do all kinds of conservation. I've talked a little bit about what we do. This is a picture of a perpetual conservation easement. Does anybody know what a conservation easement is? It's basically the most powerful, most conservative, best tool that we have to conserve waterfowl habitat and wildlife habitat in this country. The reason being is because a conservation easement is completely voluntary. We're not here to tell people what to do. That's what separates you from environmentalists. That's what separates conservationists from environmentalists. We want to talk about what we can do together, and when you have a conservation easement, you have a willing landowner that wants to conserve the environment, the land that they have, the way that they have it. They want it to stay that way forever for whatever reason they want. Maybe they don't want it to become a strip mall, or maybe they don't want it to become a parking lot. They want it to always be a ranch or a family farm, and they put a conservation easement on it, and the government or a land trust will compensate them for the environmental values, and it will remain that way forever and ever and ever. It is a legal contract between a willing seller and a willing buyer to purchase and preserve the great things that we have out on the landscape. This is a really cool project. This is coastal Louisiana. ACC doesn't really do anything about energy development, does it? I'm just kidding. I know that you do. That's why I put this up here. This coastal Louisiana loses like 100 football fields of marsh every single hour or something like that. Don't quote me, but it's a lot. And so they're really concerned because of the Mississippi River washes all of that stuff away. How does that impact energy development? Well, companies like Valero, Mosaic, ConocoPhillips, they have oil and gas leases that are associated with that coastline, and when it recedes, they lose ground. And so these terrorist projects like this that you can see, Billy, you see all these little crisscrossy things? Those are gonna rebuild native marsh habitat that's great for ducks, it's great for water quality, it's great for energy security, and more importantly, it's great for coastal protection. These terraces have literally saved lives in Louisiana in recent hurricanes, thanks to the work that Ducks Unlimited has done with the oil and gas industry. And what do we get? What are the results? Boom! Everybody give it up for DU conservation staff in the biggest year ever. 1.2 million acres of conservation in 1 year, thanks to all of you and all of the people that go to our events and all the people that support Ducks Unlimited and all of the great people that we work with, all of our volunteers and all of our partners like ACC. What else do we get? We get a legacy. And I want y'all to look at this slide because right here is right when Ducks Unlimited started doing conservation in the United States. Before that, we were really focused on the breeding grounds. Our first conservation project with the North American Wetlands Conservation Act, well, it wasn't it was duck stamp dollars, was in the Ace Basin, I think. Wasn't it, Evan? Yeah. It was in the Ace Basin of South Carolina, the low country, and it was at that point that we realized right around here that we can't just do this by ourselves. We have to have partnerships with the government, and we have to get involved in the policy space. This is when the North American Wetlands Conservation Act was signed into law by George H.W. Bush, and you can see what happened to the conservation, boom, 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 all the way up to there, and we have rapidly accelerated the work that we do, the conservation that we do by partnering with governments, but I want to be clear that what Ducks Unlimited does is market-based conservation. It begins with that DU dollar that you spend at your local event. Our conservation staff, our policy staff, our development staff, we take your dollar and we work with government partners and we apply for grants at the federal and state level. We work with philanthropic organizations, foundations to get other matching dollars. And then by the time your dollar hits the ground, it ends up being $3, $4, sometimes as much as $6 in conservation. Give it up for the ducks if you think that's a great deal. There's a little pause there. I was afraid that one might not have landed. And so to wrap things up before I get into the questions, this is the ultimate thing that we get. 19 million acres conserved in America. Every one of those little dots represents one or more conservation project. You can see how they align with the areas that we have wetlands and everything else, the different flyways and habitat. It's all driven by science, which is cool. And it's all driven by the passion of duck hunters and Ducks Unlimited supporters across the country that love wetlands because of all the great things that they do for us every single day. They provide biodiversity. They provide clean drinking water. They provide groundwater recharge, flood protection, coastal resiliency, and nutrient management and soil health. And most certainly, they one day will fill the sky with waterfowl today, tomorrow, and forever. So thank you very much, and I'd be happy to answer any easy questions that you have. Oh, wait, there's more. I forgot I added this. I told you a little bit about our Ducks Unlimited University program. These are college chapters. You might have one at your college that you want to get involved in. You might want to go to their events. You might want to volunteer. Don't let it take away from what you're doing for ACC. That's very important. But this is another opportunity for you to spread your wings and get involved. And then last, but certainly not least, there's a QR code if you're inspired to join Ducks Unlimited Day. For the low, low price of $35, you can get a subscription to Ducks Unlimited magazine, and you can become part of a community that is conserving wetlands across North America and doing good in a voluntary and incentive-based way. So now for the questions. Brian's got a question.
Is Zach, thanks so much for what you do and for what you're doing to, conserve America. But the main question here is, what can we do, not just as students, but as members of ACC, young professionals, young conservatives, what can we do to help conserve our lands so that way we can one day have unlimited ducks?
Yeah, no, thank you for that question. You can get involved in your DU University chapter. You can continue what you're doing with ACC. This is critically important. I really cannot tell you how proud I am of where this organization has come, and even especially under Chris's leadership, you guys are doing fantastic work. You can subscribe. You can go to those websites. You can subscribe to Duck Policy Insiders. That's our newsletter. You can sign up to receive action alerts from Ducks Unlimited when issues arise that might impact wetlands conservation. You can lend your voice to that. You can come find me. But just stay engaged. Go outdoors. Buy a federal duck stamp, whether you're going to go hunting or not. It'll also get you on some national wildlife refuges that also charge fees. I know that presentation wasn't that comprehensive. There's got to be some more questions. Oh, there's one. Carly.
Hi, Zach. 2 questions, actually. What is your favorite duck? And second, I've gone to a lot of community-based events, and I'm not someone that comes from a hunting background. So, how can someone that maybe hunting's not their number one thing, ducks aren't their number one thing, how can they still get involved with Ducks Unlimited?
Yeah, that's a great question, Carly. So the first answer is a gadwall. I love gadwalls. And the reason that I love a gadwall is because a gadwall loves to volunteer. And we love volunteers. But on a slow day, on a cold morning, when you've watched the sun come up and the marsh come to life and there's no ducks flying and you think it's going to be a terrible hunt, you blow your duck call and all of a sudden that gadwall just goes and comes straight in every time. They love to volunteer. So I love gadwalls. And then the second part of the question, Carly, really become a member of Ducks Unlimited if you care about wetlands. We are the world leader in wetland conservation. And the reason that I say that is not because it's good for us. If what you want is more wetlands conservation, if what you want is to be informed, then joining Ducks Unlimited, signing up for newsletters, staying engaged, meeting other like-minded people is really the best way to do that. And there are lots of great organizations that you could join to do that. You could join the National Wildlife Federation. You could join Ducks Unlimited. You could join Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation if you're into big game. But listen to podcasts. The DU podcast talks about science, it talks about hunting, it talks about ecosystem services. We have all sorts of different varieties of content on there. But at the end of the day, all of this is really about relationships. It's about our relationships with one another. It's about our relationships with the land. And we've got to nurture those relationships by getting together at great events like this so that we can learn from one another, connect, and figure out how we can make a difference together.
Last question, back here.
Hi, my name is Esther, and I'm a student at George Washington University in DC. And I just wanted to ask, you as a member of Ducks Unlimited, if you could perform any part of the Clean Water Act, what would it be?
Thanks, Esther. That is a good question. If I could reform the Clean Water Act, I would change it so that it could sustain the Supreme Court challenges and this yo-yo effect of uncertainty that we've had over the last 15 years. Ducks Unlimited catches a lot of heat because we don't have a lot to say about every new version of the Clean Water Act or the WOTUS regulation, the Waters of the United States regulation, which is the regulation that implements the Clean Water Act. You get a Republican administration in, they pull it back. You get a Democratic administration in, they expand it. Courts keep striking it down, and what we need is for Congress to pass a Clean Water Act that can stop this yo-yo uncertainty. The reality is that if you look at the language of the Clean Water Act, it seems like it has intended to leave a lot of latitude to the states to implement wetland regulations and water protections that are good for those states. What's good for clean water in Colorado is not the same as what's good for clean water in Virginia, and what's good for clean water in Texas, or what's good for clean water in Tennessee. We just dealt, and we're in Tennessee, so I'll talk about it really quick. Tennessee had a legislator that tried to remove all of the state level protections for wetlands, and Ducks Unlimited fought very hard to ensure that that didn't go any farther than it needed to be. We need to have empathy for people that are frustrated with the regulatory environment. I think that a lot of the mindset that people have here with respect to the government and what it's supposed to do probably get frustrated by bureaucracy. And we deal with bureaucracy on environmental restoration projects. We want permitting reform just as much as the energy development industry wants permitting reform, because it's really frustrating to get a $250,000 grant to restore a wetland in Iowa and to be told that you have to do $275,000 in mitigation because the ditch that you're converting into a functioning wetland was a wetland before it was a ditch, and now because it's a ditch, it's considered a wetland, so you're disturbing a wetland, so you've got to do mitigation on that. It's really nuts. But at the end of the day, we want a conservation policy that is durable and meets the needs of the people all around. I was talking to Evan earlier, and I told him, conservation happens on a full stomach. If you don't have economic prosperity, then nobody's going to care about the environment if they're worried about where their next meal is going to come from. So all these things have to work for everybody, and unless we have empathy for people that identify real problems with the way that the laws are written or that they're carried out, if we focus on our common values, and I believe that wanting clean air and clean water is a universal value that every American holds, then I think that that's how we make progress together. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.